So we're going to make a left up here onto Beacon Street.
All right, got it.
All right, and there's our destination, coming right up here on the right.
All right, well, I see a large brick building that spans the width of Crosby Street right in front of the building. Looks like it might have been an old manufacturing company or something like that.
Yeah, this is an historic building here in New Hampshire's capital city of Concord, and we could park right there in the parking lot in the front.
Looks like there's various offices and businesses in there today.
There are, but originally this building was part of New Hampshire's very first state prison.
Really? That's hard to imagine today.
Yeah, well, there used to be other buildings with cell blocks and wire fences and all that kind of stuff. But this one was filled with workshops for prisoners. It's the only part of the original prison still standing.
And what brings us here today, Jeff?
So we've come to these grounds to witness New Hampshire's first state execution. I'm Jeff Belanger. Welcome to episode 373 of the New England Legends podcast.
And I'm Ray Auger. Thank you for joining us on our mission to chronicle every legend in New England, one story at a time. If you've got a story lead for us, please contact us through our website. Our website is also the place to see dates for Jeff's Fright Before Christmas story tour and to see my band, the Pub Kings.
So we'll explore the story behind New Hampshire's first execution right after this word from our sponsor.
Okay, so we're standing in this neighborhood located pretty close to where Interstate 93 and 393 intersect. Anyone who's ever been to Concord, New Hampshire knows that though it's a state capital, it's not really a big city with a bunch of high-rise buildings. It's more of a town.
Yeah, totally true.
So all around this two-story red brick commercial building are neighborhoods with one-family houses and little yards and a few small businesses.
This building is located at 2.5 Beacon Street, and it was once known as the New Hampshire State Prison Warehouse. The state prison was constructed in 1860 and took up a lot more land than this building does today, obviously. And as I said earlier, this was the site of New Hampshire's first state execution for a capital crime. We know it took place in the prison yard, which would have been, right over there where those houses are today.
Wow. I mean, thinking any of them are haunted?
I don't know. But to find out what happened, let's head back to the year 1868.
It's early morning, Friday, May 8th, 1868, here in the town of Hampton Falls, New Hampshire. Though it's spring, you wouldn't know it by the weather.
No, you wouldn't.
There's about 4 inches of snow on the ground right now. We're currently standing outside the farm belonging to Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Brown. Thomas is 75 years old. His wife is 73. It's about 5 a.m. when the Browns' farmhand, Timothy Leary, walks from his bunkhouse on the property through the snow and up to the front door of his employer's home, which is how he starts each workday. He knocks on the door, but no one answers.
It's unusual for the Browns not to be awake yet. Still, Leary shrugs and makes his way to the barn. Inside the barn, Leary finds the Browns' horse with his bridle on.
Now that is strange. Why would the horse be getting saddled up this early in the morning?
Unless Mr. Brown had somewhere to be this early?
Maybe. But you'd think he would have said something to his farmhand about that yesterday. Leary believes something is wrong, so he's walking back over to the house. He's knocking on the living room window and looking around inside.
I don't see anyone in there.
No, neither do I. Now Leary is heading to the back door of the house that leads into the kitchen. He's pounding on the door.
I think I hear someone moving inside.
Oh
my God, what happened?
wow.
So Mr. Brown is covered in blood.
Jeez.
He's got a huge gash in his head. I mean, he's barely able to hold himself up.
He can't seem to talk either, but he's making his way back to the bedroom to lie down.
Look over there on the floor.
Oh my God, this is awful. Mrs. Brown is lying on the floor in a pool of her own blood. Her skull is crushed in.
Oh, she's not breathing or moving. Is that?
I see it. There's an axe covered in blood.
Oh my God.
Farmhand Leary is running out the door to get help.
Within a few hours, Dr. William Perry from Exeter arrives, as does the marshal from Portsmouth. Sadly, Mr. Brown's wounds were too severe. He'd lost so much blood, he just drew his last breath.
Pretty soon, suspicion turns towards a young man named John Ross.
Now, Ross is a farmhand who worked here for the last 8 months. He quit the job just a few days ago, but it's not like he left on bad terms. Mrs. Brown even gave him $4 as a parting gift.
The marshal is starting to piece together everything that happened. The Browns had recently sold a bunch of cattle and had over $500 in cash in the house from the sale. And this morning, their other farmhand, Mr. Leary, had seen their horse with the bridle on, which makes the marshal suspect maybe the killer intended to steal their horse for his getaway.
Well, the marshal's making his way back from the barn now. He's looking at... Oh, wait a minute. What's he found?
Well, let's take a look.
Oh, look at that. There's footprints in the snow.
They've been partially filled in by the snowfall, but yeah, you can clearly see that footprints are moving away from the house. The marshal is mounting his horse and racing off to follow those footprints.
Word spreads around Hampton Falls that the Browns' old farmhand is wanted for murder, and it doesn't take long for the marshal to track down and arrest John Ross. And that's when the house of cards falls down.
It turns out John Ross is not his real name. He's really Josiah Pike, who was originally from Newburyport, Massachusetts. Pike was married 10 years ago, but his wife and child died soon after the birth. He turned to alcohol and took odd jobs to keep himself fed. When the Civil War began a few years ago, he signed up to fight. He was wounded in battle and discharged from the Union Army. Since the war ended, Pike had gotten himself in trouble multiple times for public drunkenness and stealing. He had just finished a 2-year prison sentence in Ipswich, Massachusetts, when he came up to Hampton Falls, took the name John Ross, and began working for the Brown family.
I guess his old ways just caught up to him. But now you add in a brutal axe murder on top of the robbery? When asked how he pleads to these heinous crimes, Pike answers,
"Guilty, Your Honor."
The judge sentenced Pike to hang.
Pike has spent the past 17 months in the New Hampshire State Prison in Concord awaiting his execution. It's now Tuesday, November 9th, 1869. The guards are walking Pike up to the gallows in the yard of the New Hampshire State Prison.
Pike spent most of the night with the chaplain reading from the Bible and asking God for forgiveness for what he'd done.
Now, Pike appears shaky.
Yeah.
I mean, who can blame him? But he isn't putting up any resistance. When the chaplain offers a prayer, Pike kneels before him to receive it.
The sheriff just offered Pike a chance to share any last words. It looks like Pike is about to address the crowd gathered here today.
"I don't shrink from my fate. I do not dread to die. I know how worthless my life is, and I have hope in Christ for a better hereafter. But I wish to leave a warning in my last words to those who are inclined towards intemperance. It has decided my fate and ruined my soul. And I entreat those who deal in intoxicating drink to stop that dreadful work. And oh, I implore their victims to stop before it is too late. As I hope to be forgiven the sins of a misspent life, I forgive all severity and injustice toward myself, and willingly commit myself, wrecked and unworthy as I may be, to the merciful Savior. To my special friends, who have been so kind and who have given me sympathy, advice, and encouragement during this prison life, I can only return the heartfelt thanks of a dying man. I can now feel what they have done for me, but I cannot utter my feelings. I commend them to God for his blessings, and imploring mercy for myself, I give you all my last farewell."
Okay, Pike is stepping up on the platform, and the guard is tying his hands behind his back. And now he's lowering his hat to cover his face.
They're placing the rope around his neck as the sheriff reads the sentence to him again. Josiah Pike just fell about 8 feet below the gallows with a single twitch of his body. The sentence has been carried out. And that brings us back to today.
Josiah Pike was the first person executed by the state for a capital crime. There'd be 25 more up until 1939. Now, most of the New Hampshire State Prison buildings were torn down in the 1890s, but this lone building remains. It was a manufacturing company at one point, and now it's broken into offices. It's a building that also now sits on the National Register of Historic Places.
You can't help but wonder if tenants and neighbors realized the gruesome history that would have taken place right outside.
Well, most of what we know about the crimes were pulled from newspaper clips from the time. The story went out on all the wire services and made it into a lot of newspapers. Pike blamed the booze, but also himself.
Now, the guy had a rough life.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it justifies theft and murder, but this is one of those stories that has tragedy all around it.
Yeah, it is. And though the buildings are gone and what's left has changed its name and purpose, Sometimes history's like a stain that can never be washed away. A man was hanged here, punished. When you know the stories and hear his words right near where it all happened, you can't help but get a chill.
That you do. And that brings us to After the Legend, where we take a deeper dive into this week's story and sometimes veer off course.
After the Legend is brought to you by our Patreon patrons. This group of insiders is the backbone of everything we do. Bringing you 2 episodes each week takes a lot of time and money, and our patrons help us with our hosting and production costs, marketing, and everything else it takes to keep us going. They kick in just $3 per month, like buying me and Ray a beer. One of those domestic ones that we'd have to split. And for that, they get early ad-free access to new episodes, access to our entire archive of shows, discounts, plus bonus episodes and content that no one else gets to hear. Please head over to patreon.com/New England Legends to sign up. And to see some pictures of the former prison building, click on the link in our episode description or go to our website and click on episode 373.
I was just up in Concord.
You never know where you were standing.
Right.
That's the cool thing. I think about that a lot because of probably the work we do. But wherever I'm standing, especially if I'm going someplace cool and historic, you're just like, whoa, who was here before me?
Right.
You
Am
know?
I standing above a cemetery that was the headstones were moved, but the bodies weren't?
Yeah.
And that could be anywhere, really.
Anywhere. By the way, that happens all the time.
Sure.
I remember when I got to go to the White House when I was working on my book, Who's Haunting the White House? And I was standing right in the north portico. That's the front porch. Right? It's not a porch, but it's, under those columns, And I was standing there and I was like, oh my God, every U.S. president stood right here, right where my feet are right now. I know Washington died before it was complete, but he was there. He laid the cornerstone. He was on the ground. So all of them, Washington, Lincoln, everybody was
so much history
right here. And you connect to it. You're just like, that is so cool. You know, I mean, when you're in Gettysburg or whatever. But I feel sorry if maybe we have some fan who lives in the neighborhood of this building and they're just like, wait, my house.
What happened?
So right here in my living room would have been the gallows, potentially.
Could be. Absolutely.
Could have been.
Yeah.
But if it makes you feel better, no, it's your next door neighbor's living room that has the gallows, not yours. We don't know. We don't know for certain exactly where they were, where the prison would have been laid out. But right, I mean, that building's still there, so close by.
I looked it up on Google Earth.
Yeah.
2-story building.
Yeah.
Oh, we were there, actually.
Right,
Sorry, excuse me. But I had to take a second look.
Yes.
Just to see if I knew the neighborhood. And at first glance, I thought it was the building I worked in.
Oh,
because it looked the same.
Yeah.
And then I noticed 2 stories, and no, it's not it.
It is nondescript. I guarantee you would drive right by it.
Yeah.
It's just a 2-story brick building with various businesses and signs out front saying whatever is here and that's there. And you would not give it a second look.
Sometimes we forget that there was more land back then than there were houses.
Well, right. Yeah. Yeah. It was
It's such a congested area of houses and businesses.
Yeah.
But at one time, it was farmland.
and it's the capital of New Hampshire, but you would never know.
Oh, yeah.
There's so many small towns you've been to that are way bigger than the capital of New Hampshire.
Now, it's a big town.
Sure, it sprawls
it.
out, yeah.
But it's certainly not a city.
No.
I don't think there's anything that's over. I mean, there's a hotel there with maybe 5 floors, but that's about it.
And the state capitol building is there. And so that's the most prominent. You can't miss it.
Yeah.
Because it's the most prominent thing in town. But
it's quite the sight.
But yeah, that's New Hampshire. But yeah, I think about that, and so New Hampshire's struggled with the death penalty. There was talk to try to ban it or whatever. I please don't quote me, but I don't believe it's officially banned. It just hasn't been used since the 1930s.
Really?
When that last one took place. 26 people have been executed, and Pike was the first. And it was only a few decades that it was really in use. But I think it's one of those things where they're like, we reserve the right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the way I feel about the death penalty is, I'll just say it. I'm totally against it. Unless you hurt someone in my family.
Right.
And then I'm totally for it.
Yeah.
Which means if you're not going to be a hypocrite, you're going to have to accept it. Sometimes maybe that is the right.
You'll pull the lever.
Gladly.
Yeah.
Depending on, you hurt my daughter? Yeah. Oh, please. No. I got this.
Actually, they probably wouldn't even get to the chair.
No.
Or the gallows.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Have you ever been to the state prison?
No.
It's right on the road. It's like
okay.
right on the main road.
Yeah.
And literally on the road. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not like you're looking off to the distance.
You drive through the commissary, prisoner's wave.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's right there. I used to get letters from...
Oh, because they're listening.
They were listening. I'm just remembering this now, but I used to get letters all the time from prisoners. And every once in a great while, we'd get a collect call from somebody
Did you take
asking
it?
for a request. Yeah, I want to say we did. I don't remember. I do remember the letters. I remember.
What are you in for?
One inmate drew a picture of my co-host Sammy, which she was so freaked out about that.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'm like, these guys are behind bars, and
for now,
we're their friends. Yeah, right. He might look for you after and wear your skin as a
coat.
bodysuit.
Yeah, sure, yeah, yeah.
But
No, I
yeah, that
get
was
it.
interesting.
I get it. I got a letter once from a prisoner who was a reader. Like one of my books made it to a prison library, and he's like, "Oh, I really enjoyed your book. Maybe you'd consider, donating,
Putting in a good word for me with the governor.
right? Donating one of your other books. You can mail it. Here's my
that's
address, and don't worry, I didn't kill anybody or nothing." And like that was, I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty close
Sure.
to exactly what it said. And I was just like, "Oh, I'm just a poor author. I don't have books to mail to prisoners."
Although I'd want to know the story. Okay, you didn't kill anybody, but if you did, there's circumstances like you were just talking about. So,
right.
let's
Justifiable
not just jump
homicide.
to conclusions there.
No, I know. But the fact that he didn't expound.
Well, right. It's not like I killed anybody. I just raped 15 people.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, yeah. No books.
Oh, you're
for
one of the
you.
good ones.
Yeah. No free books for
Jeez.
you. No. So
He led with that, but didn't really tell you what he was in for.
so now I had to wonder. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, no, prison life is not one that anyone wants for sure. And the thing with Pike too
I
is
wouldn't
that
survive.
he was so the snowstorm in May. It doesn't happen. It's very rare,
Right.
And it was one of those things where it melted fast. We've seen it. We've seen the freak snow, and
Yeah.
not usually May, but like
April 1st. Remember that one?
Yeah, there's been snowstorms, and you can get, and as we've learned from previous stories, sometimes those early spring snowstorms are brutal because there's so much moisture in
Right.
the air.
Yeah.
And in February, it's typically not that bad because the air's dry.
Right.
So you don't tend to get a lot of precipitation. But yeah, March, April, lots of moisture, the temperature drops, and you can get a foot of snow.
How do you justify November 19th, 60 degrees outside?
Well, right, yeah.
It's so nice
Getting
out.
so weird. Yeah. No, I get it. Yeah, the weather's been topsy-turvy and so dry up here in New England. We could use some rain.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
A lot of fires, a lot of local. I mean, we're getting off topic here, but a lot of local fires, brush fires.
Right, and people getting arrested for arson and going back to jail. See how I pulled it right back?
Thank you.
Yeah, it was that fast.
I derailed us.
Yeah,
Thank you for bringing
got
us
it right back on track. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's it's one of those things. And when you go through the neighborhoods, there's always a backstory. Always, every place you've ever been, there was something there before. And if you go back far enough, you might just find a hanged man.
Before you leave, please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and post a review for us, especially on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, and it goes a long way in helping others find us. You should also join our New England Legends Facebook group, where people are always sharing weirdness from the northeastern United States.
I'd like to thank Marv Anderson for lending his voice acting talents this week. Thank you to our sponsors. Thank you to our Patreon patrons. And our theme music is by John Judd.
Until next time, remember,
The Bazaar is closer than you think.